Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca Lee and I am the Online Services Coordinator here at ACCES Employment. For those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome to our online event series for the month of October. And thank you for tuning in from all over the world. Those of you that are joining us for a while now, thank you so much for your continuous support as well. Today, our webinar will be on how to make your LinkedIn profile stand out. And I have with me today a very special guest, Leslie Hughes. Leslie is our LinkedIn optimization specialist. She's a principal of Punch Media, amongst many other things. We will discuss about how to register for other webinars later on after this event. And without further delay, let's get started. And just a little bit about ACCES Employment, especially for those of you that are joining us for the first time. We have been around for over 30 years, and ACCES Employment has provided services and programs to job seekers as well as new Canadians as well. We have 5 locations within the Greater Toronto area, and we have established relationships with over 2,000 plus employers and contacts across a variety of different sectors and industries, including Leslie Hughes. ACCES delivers a variety of sector-specific programs, communications training, and mentoring programs for our job seekers. Most recently, we also started delivering online services, such as the webinar that you're attending today, to pre-arrival job seekers who are approved to land in Canada, as well as our job seekers that are located across Canada. So just a warm welcome to everyone that's joining us today. So I'm going to just point this over to Leslie, and you can just introduce yourself.
Okay, well, hi there, everyone. I'm Leslie, and I am one of the facilitators/trainers at ACCES. One of the key areas that I focus on is helping people in the sales and marketing. In sales and marketing, typically, most of the time they come from other countries, and at ACCES, my job is to teach them how to use sales and marketing, digital sales and marketing here in Canada. So how to be a little. I like to start off with like how to become a little more Canadian, which is kind of a strange thing to sort of talk about because, as you probably know, Canadians are there's such a huge diverse population in Canada. So it's kind of a fun little sort of chat about, sort of Canadian identity, if there is any right now with so many different cultures from around the world. So a little bit about me. First of all, you can probably tell I talk really quickly. So my apologies for that. I just don't seem to know how to do anything in a slower pace. But I've been told that I'm quite clear, so hopefully you'll be able to understand everything that I'm saying. But you probably really want to pay attention, not be multitasking, because there's some really key actionable steps that I'm going to be giving you here today. So a little bit of background about me. As I mentioned, I train at ACCES, and I also am, my title is really Principal of Punch Media, but I focus on LinkedIn as my channel of choice. I teach both at the college level, so I teach at Durham College. I also teach at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology, where I am one of the key trainers for the social media and digital marketing certificate there as well. And so, as I sort of said, I sort of have pivoted into the world of LinkedIn because this is where professionals are investing time. And so I work typically with a lot of executives, financial advisors, really to help optimize their profiles online, and that includes writing their profile for them and or coming into their office and doing actual seminars and workshops on how to optimize the presence of each person from their professional presence, optimize it as best as possible. So my job is to really empower you. You feel really, really comfortable and proud of your online presence. As you can see there with the little screen grab, I was on the CTV's The Social last year talking about how to maximize your digital presence, and I've been featured also on CBC Radio and some other radio and television shows as well. And last year I wrote a book which is entitled Create, Connect, Convert, and that really is about how to create a strong online presence for yourself, how to connect properly using channels like LinkedIn, and ultimately how to convert business, whether that conversion really is yourself or, as I said, just converting new clients and so forth. So that's kind of, we're going to be talking mostly about step number one, which is create today. So we have a good hour to chat about your online presence. Talk about how LinkedIn works, why it is the most useful tool for your brand, and then if you do nothing else on your LinkedIn profile, there are 3 key areas that I really, really want you to focus on in order to really make a really strong first impression for your profile. And then the bonus areas, a few key areas that I think we're going to help you really up your game to wow a recruiter and make you a star, stand out, particularly against other applicants as well. And then we'll get into the Q&A section. So how LinkedIn works, and this is sort of I talk about the importance of building quality connections, and I may be different from probably, I'd say 90 to 95% of other LinkedIn trainers will probably oppose what I'm about to say. But I really believe in building quality connections over quantity connections. And the reason for that is because you can see here with the diagram that there's you, right? That's you. Your first level connections are the people that are your direct connections. And the reason why I say it's so important to build quality connections is because your first level connections are connected to a second level connection, and that's where you can turn cold calls into warm introductions. So in the example that I often use is, you have a dream connection that you want to connect with, and you think that person's online. And the example that I teach in the class is Dr. Deepak Chopra. And so I noticed that I'm 2 degrees away from Dr. Chopra. So he's a second level connection of mine. So how that works and how that's so important is that I can just look at the first level connections who I have who are directly connected to Dr. Chopra and simply ask them for an introduction. And so, I realize that building out a network of connections is very, very important, and the wider your reach is, the exponential the connection base is going to be. But for me, I don't necessarily want to see people that are in my feed that I don't really care about their status updates, or there's just no value of exchange there. So I don't know if that makes sense a bit, and we can get into that a little bit deeper. But it really works on this 3-degree of separation sort of model, that your first degree connections, again, are kind of like what we used to call a Rolodex. I mean, not that many people really have Rolodexes anymore, but this how that works. And so it's really important to build out those first level connections, and as we will probably get into, to make sure that you're sort of vetting those people and personalizing and getting to know them a little bit better. So why LinkedIn is essential? I know it's not the sexy channel. I know it's not the way that there's very people that are eagerly sort of jump onto LinkedIn and say, "Yoo-hoo, I can't wait to get onto LinkedIn." But it really is the channel where decision makers are actually investing time. So the psychology of LinkedIn is quite different than other channels where we're going onto Facebook or Instagram to connect with friends or family and see what they're up to. And so our mindset's quite different there. LinkedIn is really the business network. Members have more buying power than other social sites, and it's actually 277% more effective at converting clients than other channels as well. Now, LinkedIn isn't the widest reaching out of all the social networks. Facebook now has over 2 billion people in the world are on Facebook, even 800 million on Instagram. But LinkedIn is the business network with over 500 million members in over 200 countries, and there's 2 new members joining every second. So if you haven't, most of you hopefully have got a LinkedIn profile. You're probably here because you understand the importance of it, but that's why it's really essential. And it's really essential not only just for people that are job prospecting, but also for people that are looking to, in the business world. This is a very important channel. And as you can see here, at least 50%, I've seen as up as high as 80% of hiring managers will actually look at a candidate's profile before they even hire them. And so this is why it's another key thing for you to do is, and I get my students to do this at the college, which is actually, as a part of their assignment, is to log out of all their profiles and then Google themselves based on what a recruiter might see about them. And so I'm going to just kind of encourage you, not at this very second, but once we finish this webinar, is to actually do this for yourself. Log out of your Facebook, Instagram, all your different channels, and then even sometimes it's even better to go onto a neutral computer that you haven't used before, and Google your name to see what a hiring manager would see when they're Googling you. And you might be surprised that some of the things that appear. And so sort of my recommendation to my students is to lock down some of the channels, particularly Facebook. You know that all social channels are actually set to public. And so you may want to lock down your privacy settings on Facebook if you don't want a hiring manager to see sort of what goes on in your family life. I mean, that's up to you. I also caution very highly, and I can't say this strongly enough, never, ever, ever publish anything on the internet, on social media at all, ever, that you wouldn't want seen on a billboard. This is really key because you may think that something is going up there and it's, you know, it's just for your friends and family. Screen grabs can be taken and so on and so forth. I know we're talking about our professional profiles, but your personal lives meld into your professional life as well. So I just really want to caution that. All right. So without sort of, I don't want to give too much information because I have a tendency of sort of wanting to give a lot. So, so I boiled sort of how LinkedIn benefits you into 3 distinct areas. Now, we know that LinkedIn, your profile is kind of like your resume, but it's not exactly like your resume. What I like to call LinkedIn is your resume with personality. And so while a lot of you, especially if you've gone through the ACCESS program and you've been working with the team there, that you understand that you have a master resume, one that is really the basis for anything that is going to be tailored for specific jobs. And so this is where your LinkedIn profile sort of comes into play. It's kind of like your master resume, but you can get a lot deeper into your story. And I'll get into that when we get into the 3 key steps. It is like your Rolodex, as I mentioned. So it is like, you know, those degrees of separation really help to build, and it's a really powerful, robust database of who you're connected to and who can help you get a foot in the door with your dream company. And then, you know, as I mentioned, or I haven't mentioned already, but it is kind of like your electronic business card in a way. And so when people are Googling you, LinkedIn is going to be one of the highest ranked sites. When people look for you online, LinkedIn is going to be one of the highest ranked ones. So what is that first impression, and how are you wowing that? How are you wowing your target audience, whether that is recruiters and or you know, if you're converting people into sales. Now, I love this quote, which is from Jeff Bezos, who's the founder of Amazon, who says that your personal brand is what people say about you when you leave the room. And why this is so very important is because we all are now our brands. And from one position, you know, you're crafting your brand story, right? You're the hero of the story, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But you really have to realize about telling the story based on how others see you as well. So you know what you do, you know your skills and your competencies and so forth. It's really important to get on the same side of the table as the recruiter to see how they see you, and you really want to create and develop a persona that really fascinates and wows them. And it's really important for you to think about. And as I mentioned here, up to 94% of people are going to Google you before they pick up the phone or email you. So there's different statistics, as I said, that the 50% with recruiters. This goes well beyond just recruitment, though. This goes into your professional life as you continue to grow and evolve throughout your career. So if there's nothing else that you do on your LinkedIn profile, these are the 3 key areas that I highly, highly, highly suggest you focus on. Now, I have vetted, because I write LinkedIn profiles for a living, I've written quite a few, but I have also audited dozens, if not, you know, 10, like maybe probably 100 or so. I have looked at so many different LinkedIn profiles, and most of them have not completed these 3 key areas. I'm going to go through each one of these separately: your photo, your headline, and your summary. And these 3 key areas are so very important because it's the first thing that people will look at when they land on your profile. Your photo is so very important. It's, you know, sort of that first online impression. We'll get into some of the tricks on how to optimize your headline and summary. But remember, it only takes a few seconds to make a first impression. And some of you may have already heard this, that, you know, I think it's recruiters that take, you know, maybe 6 seconds to sort of skim through your resume. Well, if they like your resume, they're probably going to take a look at your LinkedIn URL, they're going to go onto your LinkedIn profile, and they're going to find out a little bit more about you. And so while it only takes a few seconds, again, I like to put more in, because I think if it's helping people to make up their mind, whether it's me or somebody else that I'm competing against, then I want to make sure that all of that information is in there for the recruiter and or for the person that you're trying to convince. Okay, so you have a photo. Now, funnily enough, in the class that I teach at ACCES, I have a whole library of do not do's. I have so many people whose photos are, there's people with babies, people with dogs, logos. Even so far, if you can believe this, I've even got pictures of men and women that are virtually topless. Like the men have no shirts on, the women are in bikinis. You wouldn't believe the number of people that have unprofessional photos as their first impression. And especially, I think, you know, sort of to caution for anybody that is sort of new to Canada, please don't put your passport photo or your, you know, driver's license photo as the hero. You know, you don't want to include those pictures. You want to really appear polished, clean, and close up. Like, you want to make sure that you look like you are, you know, really confident, you're smiling, you're approachable. And, you know, your passport picture, while it may be probably one of the only ones that you have, just use even your like smartphone to take a photo against a white backdrop, and have yourself just a little bit more presentable, because passport photos, you're not smiling, you're not friendly, and people really want to work with someone who looks smiling and approachable. And so you can see from these 3 pictures here, these are 3 colleagues of mine. They're not models, but they've had their headshots taken professionally. I usually recommend having a professional headshot taken if possible, because that first impression really speaks volumes. And again, if you're competing with other people in the same landscape, you want to make sure that that first impression it stands out and really wows the recruiter as well. And so you may think that you know, your photo is really inconsequential. In fact, it's one of the most important areas you want to focus on. Now, the second area that you really want to focus on is having a headline. So this is the area that is right below your name. And so you can do this one of 2 ways. Mine, I do with keywords. So you can see there I've got LinkedIn in a couple of different places. I do my best to wow people with the fact that I teach at a college, so I've been given the designation of professor. And also I was featured on CBC Radio and they called me a social media guru. So I've included those as sort of social proof, you know, who am I and how do I help my target audience? I really love Sue Horner's. I've asked her permission to use this because I think she's done a great job with showcasing not only that she's a freelance writer and her company is called Get It Right, but her story really is that I help, in her first person, I help corporate communicators read writing that has warmth and personality. And when you have those 120 characters, you can effectively, you know, go beyond just your title. Like my title is principal at Punch Media. Well, that doesn't mean anything to anyone. Nobody knows what that means. So with the 120 characters that you have, try to frame that up in a very, very short, succinct story of what's your value proposition. What are you bringing to the table? My suggestion is to write your draft in a Word document, because then you can play with the character count. You look at how many characters you have, because it's really quite limited. So this is going to be a bit of a challenge. There was a quote by I think he's a philosopher by the name of Blaise Pascal, who said, "If I had more time, I would have written you a shorter letter." And so the idea here to condense things is actually more challenging than to write a lot. So think about keywords. How do you help your target audience, and how do you really fascinate them from that get-go, as I mentioned? So here's a little bit of a few different suggestions. I like to focus on, you know, what do you specialize in? So even if you're new to Canada, wherever you've come from, you have experience in other areas. And so, you know, can you say, I'm an experienced account manager? Am I a seasoned? You know, those kinds of words. And what do you specialize in? So that you can really narrow the focus of, are you in pharmaceuticals? Are you in internet technology? What sort of background do you have, or where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? And so how do you frame up, who are you, and like, who are the people that you help? So again, you can use that through bullet points and keywords, or through a bit of a story here. I hope that makes sense. So it's going to take a little bit of time for you to play with those words, and I want to reassure you that LinkedIn is a living document where you can change your content whenever you want. And so something that works for you today may feel like, oh, you know what, I think change that up a little bit tomorrow. I don't suggest you change it all the time, and you certainly don't want to change it for each and every job that you may be applying to. You don't want to be, you don't want to have too many different personalities out there. But maybe there's a word. For me, I think I wrote on there that I was a LinkedIn optimization specialist. I think I've changed that to LinkedIn profile writer because I think that sounds a little bit better to the reader. So again, you may want to play it with what you're trying to put out there, and how does your target audience actually perceive what you're putting out there, if that makes sense. Now, the last step in this three-step process is your LinkedIn summary. So here's where you're going to spend the lion's share of your time. This is actually the hardest part, is writing, again, who are you? How do you help your target audience? And so you want to be thinking of this as an elevator pitch. When someone says, so tell me a little bit about what you do, you really want to be thinking about how do you effectively tell that story. You have 2,000 characters to play with. And that may sound like a lot. Quite frankly, I'm a chatty girl, so I have a maximizing those 2,000 character count. You don't necessarily have to maximize it. You don't have to, in some ways less is more. You really want to be succinct about your story. At the same time, if you have a lot to say, then you have those 2,000 characters to play with. You really want to think about how can people skim your content as well. So you can sort of see with the example that I've got there, which is my own profile, which I probably even changed since I have the screen grab here, is to how can you make it skimmable? How can you make sure that it's not one big lumped giant paragraph that people don't want to look at? You want to make it easy to read. You want to make it have some flow. Again, you want to write for the that you're trying to appeal to. So write it in first person. That's where you say, I am. Or, I have done this, I have done that. You don't want to write it in third person. Leslie Hughes is. And the reason why you don't want to write it is because third person, Leslie Hughes is, the principal of Punch Media, that's third person. The reason why you don't want to write it that way, in my opinion, is because it's very cold, and your interest, your job, your desire is to actually write it in a way that resonates with the reader. You want to know, they want to feel connected to you. And so when you say that, I have had this many years of experience, I'm really passionate about helping to tell this story. Then you can frame some of your accomplishments as well in the language of how committed you are, how passionate you are, how driven you are to achieve certain results. And so that's why writing in first person really does help. The one thing that I want to sort of caution or make a disclaimer really is that most of us really don't like talking about ourselves. We've been raised to be bashful and to be, not necessarily bashful, but to be a little bit more modest about our accomplishments. And usually we're told not to boast about them, right? So a lot of people, and I'm talking some of the senior executives in these big corporations, as soon as I go to interview them, almost always, as soon as we start talking, they say, oh, I really don't like talking about myself. I really don't like telling everybody how awesome I am. I don't want to come across looking like I'm bragging. And there's two things that I have about that. One of them is that LinkedIn is the channel where you're supposed to include all your accomplishments. People are expecting to see you, the rock star, and how you've produced amazing results. It's because really they want to hire the person who's the best at what they do. And so you have to include those things in there. So number one, I'm just trying to empower you. Definitely put your accomplishments on LinkedIn, and think about, again, how important are those accomplishments to the person who's hiring you. Second of all, when you write it in first person, when you write it in as I am passionate, I am driven, perhaps you've received honors and awards, I am really honored to have received this award, then it doesn't sound like bragging. It really does sound like you're really, you love what you do, you are passionate about it, you are driven to what you do, and so it's much easier to write that story when you are wrapping sort of the accomplishments in language that really sounds like you are, just really, really keen and interested on being the best in class. So having kind of going back to that one quote from Jeff Bezos that's saying that, about your personal brand, you want to be thinking about the keywords that your target audience, namely, recruiters, hiring managers, what are the keywords that they will be using to search for you? Now, it's interesting because sometimes you think that the language that you might use is the same language that a recruiter would use. And that's not necessarily the case. You want to be thinking of when someone is going to Google your skill set, what are those keywords that they're using? Because that's how recruiters sort of tend to find people. Specifically in like internet technology, they're going to be looking for someone who has a specific, unique set of skills. So Ruby on Rails, or like, I know HTML is pretty, basic, but whatever they're looking for, they want to have those keywords in there. Now, if you're in sales and marketing, that's, I've been in that landscape for a long time. I know that in some ways we're a little bit of a dime a dozen, but we also have certain keywords in sales and marketing that we know. So we know about KPIs and ROI, and we use those acronyms and so forth. And so, again, you want to tell the story in a way that resonates with the recruiter, so that they go, oh, this person absolutely knows the ins and outs of this industry. So think about those keywords. And lastly, and probably one of the most important yet often overlooked aspects of your LinkedIn profile, is how do you want someone to reach you? So the call to action, whether that's at the very beginning, I usually like to keep it at the very bottom because I think it helps to tell the flow, is how do you want someone to reach you? What is your email address and/or what is your cell phone number? Most people forget to include this on their LinkedIn profile. So this is very, very important, especially if you want someone to take action with you. Now, my suggestion is no fuzzybunny@hotmail.com. If you have a good professional, email address, that's ideal. Probably just your name at gmail.com or at Yahoo or whatever. Whatever email account typically that you use the most, but don't have a ridiculous one, is what I'm saying. And the last thing I'm going to say before I sort of move on, because we're going to have a little bit of an exercise here to help you sort of get inspired with writing your profile. You can see in my profile that I have a few bullets and I have things in capital letters. Now, the bullets, my recommendation to you is, if you are going to go with bullets, keep them very basic. I've seen a lot of different LinkedIn writers that have stars and arrows and fingers and just all sorts of different sort of bells and whistles that sort of go with that. My personal opinion is to keep it simple. Again, this is the professional network, so we're not expecting people to come out with sort of jazzy hands and disco balls. We want to keep it in a sort of very, very professional way. The only way that you're going to include bullets in your LinkedIn profile is to write it in that Word document and find the appropriate, very simple bullet, and then you cut and paste the copy into your LinkedIn profile. So hopefully that helps. Now, as I said, because your LinkedIn summary is going to be the heaviest lifting out of all of the sections, I've done everything I can to make it as simple as possible to get you inspired, and have created this bit of a worksheet that will help you to sort of get started. You really want to lead with a strong statement. So sometimes that strong statement is that you've had a number of years experience specializing in a specific niche. Usually if you've had a long number of years experience, then that actually looks really good to the recruiter. Or some people have put in, sometimes they're quotes of something that they found particularly inspiring, or sometimes it's a question. So whatever you can think of that really is that lead, strong statement to sort of lead in, to get the interest of the recruiter, the hiring manager, to get them sort of like, wow, that just sort of takes them aback a little bit, to say, wow, that's amazing, that's incredible. Then you really want to get into what's in it for your target audience. How do you solve their problems? Sometimes I include this into the story, sometimes I don't. I want to caution, do not follow this template word for word, because then you're going to look like everybody else out there. So this is just a guide to help you get started. So you may want to say, I understand in my industry or in this industry, the biggest challenges are X, Y, and Z. I understand that, a lot of times, people are tight on budget, and we need to keep things on budget, on time, and I have worked successfully to, and mitigate might not be a word you might use, but I've worked successfully to solve these problems. by providing the following solutions. And if you can put, if you're in sales, I keep using sales as an example because I work with a lot of people in sales, is, I have, overachieved my quota by so many percent. I actually saved the company money. I, increased value this way. So what are those challenges that your target audience or your industry may be facing, and how have you helped to solve those problems? What are you bringing to the table? Again, you want to include what your proudest accomplishments are. If you've been on a team that achieved certain awards, or maybe you're responsible for, like what some of the profiles I've been writing recently have a lot to do with ERP systems, and so I understand that that's a huge project and a huge challenge. So you may say, like, I successfully championed an ERP system and saw it through product conception all the way through to its implementation. I'm using kind of flowery big words here, but you know how to phrase it, and you want to do it in your own, in the way that you would speak yourself. And so how are you the best? How are you including those accomplishments? Sometimes what's kind of fun to do, and this depends on how much room you have and really how much personal information you want to include about yourself, you may want to say, in my non-working hours, I run marathons. One profile that I wrote for someone, he said, I'm on the hunt for New York City's best burger. So some people will include little things that can be considered as icebreakers. So you want to think about, does something that you do in your non-working hours, something that's remarkable. The profiles that I'm writing right this very second, the gentleman had received a Governor General's Award for bravery. I mean, that's a really cool thing to include in your LinkedIn profile. It doesn't have anything to do with his business experience, but the fact that he received a Governor General's Award for bravery, I think, is a really good key part of his story. And depending on the audience, so with financial advisors, a lot of times the story revolves around what they do in their non-working time with their family, because financial advisors typically are helping people with saving their money for retirement, with estate planning and legacy. So again, be thinking, like, how is this going to fit into my overall story, and is this going to matter to the person who's reading it? It's really up to you as to whether you want to include that or not. I think it's kind of fun. I think I don't have actually any things that I include, because my non-working hour, sadly, is all still social media all the time. I'm kind of a dork and don't really have much of a life. So that's where my non-working hours are really spent back on social media. And again, you want to sort of flow into, you can reach me at, and with your email address and or your phone number. So this helps. Again, a little bit more into creating that story. This is where I'm focusing the most time. So if you want to go through this exercise, you want to be thinking about, what is your value? And sometimes with some of the profiles that I've written, we really get into a little bit more about, what are the core values that you have? What are the things that you believe to be true within yourself? And those emotions that you can kind of tap into. What do you believe to be true? Again, the biggest challenges, and how you uniquely solve those problems. Like, how are you different than everybody else that's out there competing for the same position? If you have proof, that's terrific. Like, you may not want to be able to, you may not be able to include which specific company you produce the results from, but statistics on overachieving certain quotas and things like that, or maybe even the well-known brands that you work with, this really helps to to let the recruiter or the hiring manager know why you're the best in class at what you do. Now, we're not going to watch the video today, but we will provide this in the notes for the webinar here. This is one of the videos that I show my classes. I've probably watched this a minimum of 30 or 40 times. Every single time I watch this, I'm wowed and fascinated with how to craft a really great story. So Simon Sinek repeats again, this is a little bit of a spoiler alert, but he says in this video over and over again that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so framing up your story in your why. Why did you get involved in your industry in the first place? Why do you do what you do? Really help to tell that story, because we buy because of an emotional reason. We buy product, services, why people hire other people, because they just get us. And so I just encourage you to watch this video. It's a really powerful one. So watch this and then start to craft your LinkedIn profile, your summary based on what you've seen and really what kind of key takeaways you can take away from this video with Simon Sinek. Okay, so if you do nothing else, those three key areas, your headline, your photo, and your summary, if you do nothing else on your profile, then you will absolutely knock it out of the park. I can absolutely guarantee that. As I said, there's people even at LinkedIn that have not completed these three steps. So absolutely take the time to do those three key steps. And so because we've got a little bit more time to chat here, I have other bonus information that I'm thinking would be really helpful for your profile. And this is adding multimedia. So most of you probably don't know that you can add documents, photos, videos in your LinkedIn profile. And particularly if you are, you are interested in sort of showcasing yourself from a visual auditory perspective, video bio of yourself. This really will help the recruiter sort of get a feel, a look and feel about who you are, how do you present yourself, your confidence. And again, you can just take your LinkedIn summary and go online. It doesn't have to be very long. It could be a minute, maybe 2 minutes, to just say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is who I help, and if you're looking to connect with me, here's my information. This is such a big bonus. Most people don't take the time to do this. So, if you do add a video bio of yourself, you will be standing out amongst your other peers. Other things that you can do, particularly if you are a graphic designer or if you have other kinds of visual things that you can include, which would be adding a presentation. You can add a PowerPoint presentation to your LinkedIn profile that can basically document through a visually, some of the clients that you worked with or some of the results that you produced. Now it's not going to be easy for everyone to do this, but if you have photos, videos of yourself at presentations, things like that, you can include white papers, which are just documents. Then you can do that. There's screenshots that you can take of different things. So you can just think about doing this. Of course, you want to make sure that it's important for the recruiter / hiring manager. You don't want to just sort of put inconsequential information up there. Some people I know have added their resume to their LinkedIn profile in this section here. It's kind of redundant. You kind of really don't need to add your resume. That's what the whole point of your LinkedIn profile is. But as I said, this is another tip too, which when we're going to get into the next sections is if you have sort of written testimonials from people, you may want to include that in there as well. So it's not going to be very intuitive for the recruiter to understand that that's where you're putting your testimonials. But if there's I'm going to go through this step in a second and it'll make sense in a second, but if you do have some of those, that paperwork of someone who's giving you a testimonial, you may want to scan them in and add them in your multimedia section. Okay, this other section is called your vanity URL. Now, this isn't really all that intuitive to get here. Sadly, LinkedIn does not make things very easy when it comes to sort of doing a deeper dive onto LinkedIn. But the goal here, my explanation here for your vanity URL is that your LinkedIn, if you go at the very top of your LinkedIn profile, it'll say www.linkedin.com/in/ probably your first name hyphen your last name with a whole bunch of letters or numbers on there. And the goal here is to really bring that URL, that web link down so that it's just your first name and your last name. And your custom URL is something that you can then use on your resume, so you can actually retype this URL on your resume so people have one-click access to your LinkedIn profile. You can include it on your email signatures, so if anybody wants to connect with you on LinkedIn, they have this simple web link that they can go from here to there. The step to do this is not so easy. What you have to do is you see where on the left-hand side of the screen, or well, like right in the middle where my photo is, it'll say Me. So you click on the Me, and then there's going to be a drop-down menu that'll then say View Profile if you're not on that section already. So you're going to click on View Profile, and then you're going to edit your public profile where the arrow is there. And it's not highlighted, it's grayed out, it doesn't really seem to be like anything that you really want to click on. But when you edit your public profile, what's going to happen is on the very right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see that Edit Public Profile URL. And then you're going to see the little field there. There's going to be a little blue pencil, and you're going to click on that, and you're going to try to narrow it down just to your first name and your name. But if you're like me and you have a very common name and someone else has taken your name, you may have to add a middle initial or reverse it so that it's last name first and then first name last. So you may want to go ahead and do that. And the other aspect that I really want to cover is your social proof. So how are you wowing the person who's reading your profile? And so I'm just going to sort of, it's again, not so easy to sort of figure out how to get these recommendations, but the person has to be on LinkedIn in order to recommend you. You're going to want to go through this process. My advice usually is to pre-write it for them. So when I go through the process of this, I say to someone, hey, you know, let's just say it's this person, Garth. I'm going to say, hey, Garth, I'm just in the process of updating my LinkedIn profile, and I'd really love to feature a recommendation from you. I've written content for you, and I've written the content for you. You can feel free to change it or write one yourself, but I really thank you in advance for your time. And when you ask someone to do that for you and you customize it and personalize it and actually write it for them, they're much more likely to take action and comply. Okay, now this is sort of getting into the step 2 of the connect part, but this is something that is really, really important to me, which is every single time you connect with someone, always, always, always send a personalized connection request. Tell them why you want to connect with them. Remind them, how did you meet them? Or what's in it for them? Why do they want to connect with you? So here's where the step 2 of the connect part, which is again a little bit of a bonus, is if you're looking for a hiring manager and or recruiter that you want to connect with, search for the person or the business and then see who can connect you. They're probably not a first connection, otherwise you probably would have reached out to them already. But maybe they're a second-degree connection, and you can ask the first-degree connection privately, say, hey, first-degree connection, I'm really interested in working at this company, or I'm really interested in connecting with this person. Could you do me a favor and introduce me to that person? And so that, again, that helps, you know, it's better than just cold calling when you have a warm introduction. So the 3 steps here: search for the person or the company, select how you want to connect with them. The in-mail is a direct one-way email that you send to the second-degree or third-degree connection. That is a part of the paid program, the paid part of LinkedIn, which is the premium accounts. So if you can go through the basic steps through just, you know, through the connection, or you can send them a personalized connection request, or if you have the premium account, then you can use one of those emails. But ideally, again, you want to personalize it, customize it, what is in it for them, and try not to do too much sales in the beginning. Try not to sort of pitch yourself too hard in the beginning. You want to sort of maybe get an informational interview before you say, hey, can you hire me because I'm awesome? Then do your best to find out how can you bring value to them. How can you be of service to them before you try to say what's in it, like before you start to try and pitch yourself, if that makes sense. So I know we went through a lot of information in a very short period of time, but I just wanted to, you know, recap some of these key points, which is focus on your photo, your headline, and your summary. So those other bonus key areas, they're fantastic. If you take some time to do those things, I can guarantee you that your profile will look so much better than everybody else's. But even just the basics of photo, headline, and summary are so key. They are going to definitely stand out amongst the crowd. And if you take the time to change your LinkedIn URL, add it to your resume and your email signature. Again, this helps you with building that robust database of first-degree connections, and gives your gives your recruiters an opportunity to not have to do too much research for you. It makes you look a little bit more professional. It makes you look a little more polished. So I highly advise getting that LinkedIn URL. Getting those testimonials for social proof. You wouldn't believe how important these are. When someone stakes their professional reputation on you, this looks amazing. You can say that you're fantastic, but someone else putting out there that you are fantastic is just further verification that you're good at what you do and that people will support you. So sometimes those testimonials can be character references. So maybe you worked, maybe you have a really close friend who's in a really good, powerful position that would look really amazing on your profile. or someone who worked for you or someone who worked with you. These things are key. And again, those bonus points for adding a video bio to your profile as well. Showcasing yourself as a good presenter that's polished just adds a little bit more dimension and really will help you stand out amongst your peers. So you have some homework. I want you to Google yourself, audit your online presence, or choose someone else. This is what I have my students do. I ask them to choose a partner that will do that for them. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of different things about how our computers sort of see us based on our past history and so forth. So find someone and say, could you pretend like you're a recruiter and take a look at my presence and tell me what you think I should be changing based on what you found about me. So this will definitely help you, because oftentimes we really don't take the time to get on the same side of the table as our target audience. And step 2 is really set up those strategies to clean up your presence. Whether you need to be optimizing your LinkedIn, your Facebook. As I said, sometimes most of us don't realize that our Facebook account is set to public and that all those pictures out there, are being seen by recruiters. And that's, if you don't mind it, then that's fine. I like to keep mine in private because I wouldn't invite those recruiters or those, those hiring managers into my living room to look at my vacation photos. So I just save those for my friends and family, because that's my point of being on Facebook. But it's up to you. But again, there's a lot of different recruiters that I know. Rebecca will probably back me up on this, that they'll, and I went through this entire process. I had the perfect person on paper. They were amazing. They had the most amazing interview. They had, a great LinkedIn profile, great resume. And as soon as I Googled them and I found their Facebook account, I couldn't hire them because they wrote all sorts of nasty stuff on there, or they were writing either like sexist or racist remarks. And so it was really too bad. Like, it's too bad that this person had to be other true colors, basically, when I went onto their online profile. And so everybody at an organization is now a brand ambassador, even in their non-working hours, even when it's not 9 to 5. Your company is expecting you to be a decent person online. Hopefully that's just who you are, and so you don't really have to clean it up, but it is really important for you to recognize how others are seeing you. All right, and so as we sort of wrap things up and get into the questions and answer area, I do hope that some of you will connect with me. I have on my website at punchmedia.ca, I have a cheat sheet, which is a real, it's really helpful insofar as anybody who wants to take more action on their LinkedIn profile. I find that people are overwhelmed. They don't know what to do, which is probably why you're here in the first place. But how do I keep up to date on my LinkedIn profile? What do I do? How do I manage it? How do I keep it so that it's not a big time suck? Well, I've got a bit of a cheat sheet that will help you get your daily, weekly, monthly goals on my website there. You'll also find on my website you can access a copy of my book. Well, you can't access the book, you can buy the book. You can buy the book on my website at punchmedia.ca book, and that will give you, you can buy the Create, Connect, Convert, which is a lot more of a deeper dive on what we've talked about today. Same stuff that I go through with the LinkedIn ACCESS program of how to create a strong first impression, connect with quality people, convert business. Again, it's sort of a brand strategy from a personal level. I've taken what I know from a corporate level and broken it down into a personalized and professional brand strategy. Feel free to connect with me at LinkedIn. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm really hoping that you take the time to personalize it and say, I was on the webinar today, really found it, tell me when you found it valuable. You get to ask me questions, whatever it is, but definitely tell me that you were on the ACCESS webinar today, and I'll happily connect with you. And if you want to join, I've got a Facebook group, on Twitter. Mostly just focus on the top 2. And again, there's quite a bit of information there just to get started. So I hand it back over to Rebecca to see what kind of questions we have and see if I can't help out people with any questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Leslie, just for a very packed and informative webinar today. And I really appreciate you just lending so many great examples and your expertise as well.